right, we're back for the second half of episode 4, where we'll be finishing the assembly of the tail of the Seagull Perestroika. So now we're going to test fit. We've cut the center portion of the covering, and we're going to just do a quick test fit here now that we know that the top is facing up. And we are going to double check our measurements, and we are going to establish little lines on the very trailing edge of the horizontal stabilizer as we measure to make sure that that's centered. And we can do another test fitting here. The cool thing about this is that the vertical stab, it doesn't really lock in anywhere, but it sits flush. So this is cut and assembled very nicely. And like, again, it sits very nice and flush. It's very easy to assemble. But you know, there's no notches or anything, but it sits nice and square. You don't have to push anything down. You don't have to kind of squeeze it. But here we go with the Scotch weld, and we'll speed this portion up. Just mixing some of the glue here. And a lot of this is going to be sped up. We're going to start coating the balsa that's going to receive the horizontal stabilizer. And don't make fun of my pinky there. I didn't realize I was doing that, and as I was watching this footage, I didn't do it right here, but that first dollop of glue, I had my pinky sticking out like I was drinking tea. But we'll speed this up as we coat everywhere we identified earlier where that stab is going to be in contact. Especially these the sides and the front of that little block there. That's what I just glued on there. And then we'll do the other side. And you can see I'm concentrating on the balsa, but I'm not afraid to get some on the covering. That's just going to help keep that covering on there. And I noticed I didn't have enough Scotch weld, so I just squeeze some more out there, and we'll do another quick little mix to finish up. Now remember, we noticed that the stab hits that back block, so after I am finishing this rail here, you'll see I'll coat the rear as well. Right here. That's going to be a nice big flat surface that we'll be able to get the stab to sit with. So now we have the glue, and we'll take the stab, and I found that it fits better if you put the rear down first, and then you can push the top down in from there. So the rear is in, and set it in. You just need to push it down a little bit. It fits very nice and snug. It's easy to get in there. And we want to get that first position down, and if you marked lines on the trailing edge of the horizontal stab, this is the time where you can kind of slide it a few millimeters left or right to get it perfectly centered. And we will let this dry overnight, 24 hours, and we'll move on to the vertical stab. So here it is drying. You can see I'm lifting the whole thing by the stab itself. It's nice and tight. This is about 18 to 20 hours later. And you can see I'm showing both sides here. There's no runnage. There's no mess. There was the way we sat the glue. It looks very nice and clean. And also, if you want to, from underneath here, you can go in there and coat those edges. You have access to the bottom of the horizontal stab. So if you wanted to put another little crease of glue to secure it a little more, you can do it before you put that bottom piece of plastic on. But remember, now, you know, any extra glue that you're putting on is just going to add to the tail heaviness of this plane. So being that plastic piece can come off, I'm going to probably not add any extra glue. So here we're just looking at the vertical stab. Again, just quick test fit and looking before we even get the glue out where the wood is going to connect, where we're going to put the glue. Always take a few times to plan what you're going to do right before it. And you just saw me saying, okay, I'm going to put glue on the front here. on the very front and on that large trapezoid piece of wood, the very, very trailing edge of the whole fuselage. And so we'll speed this up. Just going to coat all these surfaces with the epoxy or Scotch weld. And the other thing, you have the very front crease and the very trailing edge of the horizontal stab. You can put some glue. You see I'm doing it on the front there. That's just another little piece to you can coat to further secure the horizontal stab. And here we'll take care of this rear piece. Take care of that little seam between the fuselage and the trailing edge of the horizontal stab. And now we can coat the vertical stab in all the places that we know it's going to connect to. I didn't put any epoxy on the horizontal stab on the sides because I figured I can put it on this piece and it would sit right where it needs to be. So you can see why I put epoxy on the fuselage in the front and the back, but left the sides to put those on the stab itself. So again, I run out of some glue, have to mix a little bit more here before we continue. You could use probably like a cheap throwaway brush to coat this. I just mix it with I have a huge bag of little pieces of wood that I use to mix, and that's what I've just always typically used. I guess I'll wait for that big bag to run out before I try to use a brush for applications such as this. So again, remember I said this fits on very nicely. There's no clip, there's no notches, it doesn't need to be pressed on. It really just sits on this flat surface. And in fact, the horizontal stab isn't raised at all. That whole place is pretty flat. So you're just going to have to double check, triple check that it's sitting, everything is aligned. I had no problems getting that aligned. And here you go. The next day, it's on there nice and secure. The way we put the epoxy in there, everything's really clean, no seepage on any of the seams. And so now all we have to do is the CA hinges for the surfaces. So I elected to do the CA hinges on the rudder first because I figured we're going to have more room to work without the elevators attached. So I thought it was a pretty smart move to go with taking care of the rudder first. We'll speed this up. And actually, a good friend of mine, Steve Ventari, we've been flying together and been RC friends for many years. In one of the earlier videos, he suggested that he sometimes uses 2 T-pins per CA hinge to make sure it's straight. And you know what? I'd never done that before, so I figured I'd try it for the first time on camera, see what I thought about it. So that's why I'm going and putting 2 per hinge in here, and we'll just see how it works out. And again, if you didn't see the episode where we did the ailerons, first of all, I suggest you look through my channel and go to that episode. But the purpose of putting the pins in the CA hinges is to help guarantee that you're getting half of the hinge in the surface itself and half in the fuselage. In this case, half in the rudder, half in the vertical stab. And it's because you can slide these hinges into the slot, but then when you try to slide the surface on, you're not sure if it's going to slide nicely or is the surface just going to push the whole CA hinge in. And these pins will guarantee that you get nice half and half coverage for the CA hinge. Another quick tip, I needed to cut the slot on the bottom hinge. That hinge that I put in first into the tail end of the trailing edge of the fuselage. The hole was there, the slot was there, but it wasn't cut through the covering, so I had to cut that with an X-Acto knife. I'm going to speed this up. This was kind of a pain. This is always rather easy or hard. I can never tell. This was a little awkward to get these in here, so we'll speed these up. But I got them in just fine eventually. Just took me a little fiddling. One of the downsides to doing that initial bend in the CA hinge is that bend can make this process a little bit hard. Sometimes they don't want to slide, or sometimes they want to bend when you try to insert them. But just be careful. Try not to bend that as much as you can, just to establish that center line to insert the T-pin. So we got the rudder in, and now we can pull out the T-pins. And this actually turned out to be a really nice shot because you can see the hinges with the table as the background. And when you take the T-pins out, you'll have about a 1/16 of a gap, and you can then finish inserting, push the hinges in all the way. You can see that gap goes away right there. And again, at this point, you always want to refer to the manual to make sure to do a quick judge. Move the surface, make sure you're going to get the throw you need. And let me look at my manual. I did it at the time. In case you don't have the manual, the rudder throw is 20 to 30 millimeters, and what you saw me move, easily 20 to 30 millimeters. So now we got our ultra thin CA to go over to the CA hinges. And again, a tip: when you're using those really long extension tips, make sure you push as hard as you can to get those on, or else if they fall out, especially when you're using super thin CA, you're going to get it everywhere. So what we're doing 1 to 2 drops on each side of the CA hinge. So I usually do 1 drop on each side of that T-pin hole. And then I move the surface just to make sure that there's nothing stuck, and I'll flip over and do the exact same thing on the other side of the CA hinges. Again, 1 drop on each side of that T-pin hole on each of the CA hinges. And in case you do get a drip of CA on there, have a bottle of alcohol, rubbing alcohol around, and some paper towels, and as soon as you can, get that towel and wipe up that CA. If you can get it really nice and early, you won't have any residue or problems afterwards. So here we go with the elevators, and we'll start with this one first, and this is going to look exactly the same as the rudder, except for now there's only 2 CA hinges per elevator. And you know, I tried with the dual pins, and just for ease of time, I was like, let's just do one. So Steve, I tried it. I didn't have any, it was cool. A few extra steps. I guess while I was filming, I was like, okay, I did 2, let's do 1. And then I think I forgot to switch back when I did the other elevator. So again, you can see using that T-pin to establish that center line, and that T-pin holds the CA hinge as you slide the elevator on. And always, before you use the CA, move the surface, make sure the alignment is where you need it, and then go ahead, again, 1 to 2 drops of thin CA on each side of that T-pin hole on the top and the bottom, the other side of the surface. So we'll flip it over and do the same exact thing to the other side of those same hinges. All right, guys, almost done. We will just do the last elevator. So thanks for tuning in to episode 4, where we assembled the tail and all the surfaces. The next episode, we're going to move to the front of the fuselage to mount the motor and mount the cowling and go from there. So guys, thanks again. We will see you in a few days, and we are one step closer to getting this Seagull Perestroika ready for flight.